Hello everybody and welcome to the Punchboard Report. My name is Blake Ryder. Today we are looking at Maglev Metro, designed by Ted Alspach and published by Bezier Games in 2021. Now this game is kind of a mishmash of route building and pick up and deliver and engine building. What we're going to be doing is laying stations out on a map and then connecting these stations and then sending our train around these tracks that we built to essentially pick up and deliver both robots, which are kind of like gold, copper, silver robots, as well as passengers, these colorful purple and coral colored passengers, and picking them up and delivering them to where they want to go. And when you deliver them, you can then add them to your player board, which allows you to both build your engine and build your scoring mechanisms. There's a bunch going on, so let's get this set up on the table. We'll kind of do a high-level overview of the game, and then we'll come right back for some thoughts. So this is the setup for Maglev Metro, and players are going to get a player board, a stack of track tiles that are transparent in their color, as well as a hand of 4 of these Endgame Scoring cards, which they will keep private. So what we're doing in the game is we are going to be placing these stations at various spots on the board, and then picking up and delivering both robots as well as passengers. And when you deliver them to where they want to go, you will then add them to your player board. And by adding them to your player board, you will then unlock additional actions as well as stronger actions, as well as endgame scoring opportunities. So let's take a closer look at these player boards. Now these player boards are split up into a few different sections. This side over here, this is going to be your scoring opportunities. Over here are going to be your actions, and here is going to be what you can do on your actions. We'll get to that a little bit later. So you see over here it says actions 1 and 2. So every time it's your turn, you will get 2 actions. However, if you fill in this row, or this row, for each row you filled in, you get additional actions on your turn. So theoretically, if you fill in all 3 of these, you will have 5 actions on your turn. Now, this middle section is really what's going to drive your turns in terms of what you can do. Now, the game is going to start. We're each going to get 3 of these robots, and you can place them anywhere you want. Generally speaking, you're going to place them here, though there are other places where you can place robots. But the game is going to start. You're going to place them generally over here, and they always have to go with a match of its color. So gold has to go where gold is, silver has to go where silver is. However, this kind of color you see in the first space, that means you can put any robot type there. So what we're doing here, let's say I place this here. This means by default, if I took a move action, I can move 1 station. However, if I have a robot here, I can now move 2 stations. However, if I then have a 3rd robot there, now again, gold matches gold, now I can move 3 stations when I take a move action. And that applies up and down the board. So if I had this here, then when I took a build track action, I could build 2. Or if I had this here, when I pick up robots or passengers, I would pick up 2. And if this was here and this was here, I would pick up 3, and so on and so forth. So that is how this kind of action selection mechanism works. And like I said, this is for endgame scoring, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. So the game is going to start, and you're going to place your robots anywhere you want. That is a legal placement. So I might put that there for track. I might place this there for move, so I can move. And I might put up pick up. That way I can pick up more robots or passengers at the stations. Okay, so now let's get back to the board, and I'll explain to you what we're actually doing in the game. But before we go any further, I just want to show you how cool these transparent track tiles are, because when you stack them, they look exactly like an actual subway map. Very cool. Now let's say this is how I decided to set up my player board initially with my 3 robots. First, I put one on build station. That's going to allow me to actually build stations. Unless you have a robot there, you cannot build a station on your turn. I place one in capacity, which means I can hold 2 robots or passengers on my train, and then track, I'm at 2. And that essentially means I have 2 units of track to spend on a turn. So I can place one here, and that will be 1 unit. Or I can actually place one across water. Crossing water counts as 2 units. So I can either place one across water, or theoretically I can do 2 of those on land. The track action also allows you to remove track that you don't want anymore wherever it is going. So on a player's turn, at least when the game starts, you'll have 2 actions. And let's say it's my turn and I decide to do the track action. So I get 2 actions. My first action is track, and I get 2. So I can go 1 and 2. Because I have a strength of 2 for that action, and I can place my tracks in a line from wherever I am beginning, which in this case is the hub, which is where all the trains start. Now, the second action I can take could be the build station, because again, I have a robot there, and then I can take any one of these stations that I'm eligible to take at the beginning of the game. We can only take these stations of these 3 colors, and I will take this one. When you take a station to build, you immediately get whatever robot is on it, and you can add it to your board wherever you want to add it. So let's say I put it there. And then I can place it anywhere I want that I have track going to, so I can place it right there. Now the robots that are currently on that space will then just go right on top. Okay? So I did my 2 actions. My first action was track. I put 2 pieces of track. Second action was build station, and again, I built a station. So let's say it gets back to me. My opponents go, and now it's my turn again. My first action could be move. And now my move action allows me to move to one station away, because again, I have nothing there. So I can move, boom, that would be my action. And my second action, I could do pickup. Now my capacity, you see, is 2, but I can only pick up 1 at a time with my pickup action. So my pickup action is a little bit weak, but I can do pickup, and I can pick either one of these robots up. I will put it, they're nice and slippery, I will put it right in there, and that will be the end of my turn. Now again, my opponents may go, and it comes back to me. Now I could do a pickup again to pick up this guy as my first action. And my second action could be to move. And since I'm at the end of my track, I can turn around and move 1 space back to the hub. Now, what we're trying to do is get these robots or people where they want to go. Robots always want to go to whatever matches their color. So bronze will always want to go there. Gold will always want to go there. Silver will always want to go there. Now the hub, however, the hub kind of counts as a neutral for all these robotic colors. So theoretically, any robot could be dropped off at the hub. However, once we get these stations and these passengers in the game, coral, I believe they call it, will want to go to that. Purple will want to go there, and so on and so forth. So I moved back there, and on a subsequent turn, I could then theoretically use one of my actions or both my actions as my drop-off. Now you see my drop-off action is actually 2, because before, when I placed the silver one that was there, I placed it on drop-off. So now in a single action, I can actually drop off both of these robots, whereas if I did not have that robot there, I would only be able to drop 1 off at a time, so it would cost me 2 actions to actually do the drop-off. However, it only cost me 1 action because I could drop off 2 in a single action. So now that I have these robots, I can place them on my board. So let's go back down here and take another look at this player board. Now I can place these robots anywhere legal on the board that matches the color. So check a look at this section over here where it says unlock passengers and build stations. So I have a bronze, which I can place right there, and then I have a gold, which I can place right there. Now, when I take the build station action later in the game, I am eligible to build stations that are lilac, and I'm also now eligible to pick up lilac passengers. Because if I didn't have that, and lilac stations were on the board because another player built them, I would not be able to pick up those lilac passengers until I had that filled in. So let's go back up top for a second. So now let's say it's a little bit later in the game, I've built track there, my train is over there, and it's my turn. Now let's say I want to take a build station action, and because I'm now eligible to build lilac, I can take one of these and I immediately get the lilac passenger that's on it, place it anywhere legal on my board. Let's say I place it there to try to build my way towards that extra action. And then I can take this station and place it where I have track running to, in this case there, and then I'll place these robots right back on top. When this happens, we also will then take the lilac passengers and place them into this nice material mesh bag that came with the game, because this is how we're going to get more passengers into the system. So those will go in there, and the bag is also pre-populated with some robots as well. And then another action that you can take on your turn is refill station. Now, I have a strength of 1 right now, so I would only draw 1 of these out of the bag. However, if I had a higher strength for that action, I would take more. And I would take 1 out, and in this case, I drew the lilac, which is good because I can pick up lilac, and I'll place it on the station where my train is located. Boom, right there. So now, on a subsequent turn, I'm already there. I can now do a pickup action, pick him up, and then get him over there and drop him off. Or her. It could be, these are gender neutral passengers. So ultimately, that is how we're going to get new passengers into the system, by building stations of those colors and getting them in the bag. And then we're going to bring them around the board, and once you get them again to where they want to go, we're going to add them to these boards. So let's go back to these boards for a second. We'll talk about scoring as well as an important action called adjust. Now the adjust action right over here, this is what is going to allow you to move robots on your player board to basically manipulate how strong and weak certain actions are. So right now my adjust has a strength of 2, okay? So that means I can move 2 of these robots based on the situation in the game. Let's say building track right now is not that important to me. I could take 1 and move that here, and now my capacity is 3, and I could take 2 and move that there. Again, always having to respect the color guidelines. Now I can hold 3 and I can also drop off 3 at once. So now and I can pick up 2. So my engine is now going weaker, obviously, in building track, but later in the game that may not be as important as unloading and loading passengers and loading them accordingly. The only other action over here that we didn't discuss is reverse train. Reverse train allows you to switch directions while you're on the fly. So as you're going, normally you would have to go straight until you reach the end of your track, and then you could turn around. Reverse train will allow you to turn around at any point during your trip. Okay, so anyway, now let's talk about endgame scoring, because at this point you understand how you're going to build stations and pick up passengers of different colors and then drop them off, and when you drop them off again, we add them to our board. So at a certain point in the game, your scoreboard might look something like this. Now these 2 sections over here deal with endgame scoring. So let's get into this. So first and foremost, you'll see, this is probably a little hard to see, but it says 1 VP next to the pink. So by default, each pink passenger on your board is going to be worth 1 point. Same goes for the lilac, and then 2 points for each the coral and the purple. However, if you fill in one of these complete rows, you will make them +1 for that color. So for here, I'm +1 for each pink. So each of my pinks will be worth 2, but if I had that filled in and all that filled in, my purple would be worth 3 because of 2 + 1. You're also going to get a point by default per link. A link is 2 stations that are connected to each other via your track. So by default, each link that you have between 2 stations will be worth 1 point. However, for each row that you have filled in, it will be +1 point per link. So you can do a link forward strategy, fill all these in, and make each one of your links worth 4. Over and above that, I mentioned before at the beginning of the game that we're going to each start with 4 of these endgame scoring cards. Now, by default, everyone's going to be able to score 1, and you're obviously going to pick whichever one is your highest scoring one. However, if you fill in one of these rows, you will then be able to score 2 of them or 3 of them, and if you fill in the 4th row, you can score all 4 of your cards, and you'll see the coloring here. You can put any colored passenger, not robot, passenger on those spots. So you're going to look through here, and this says 4 points per direct connection between those 2 stations, or 2 additional points per coral commuter, 4 points per extra player board for each extra action section that is filled. So in this situation, I got 2 of them, so I would get 4 points per section, so that would be worth 8 points. So there's a whole bunch of different scoring cards, and you're gonna score those up as well, and whoever has the most points is the winner. One more thing that's important to note is that these colored passengers, once they're on your board, you cannot move them. The adjust action can only apply to moving robots around the board. So your endgame scoring, once those meeples are in place, you cannot move them. And that's the game. This game is awesome. Let's just get that out of the way. This game is awesome. It is refreshing. They take some, classic things like pick up and deliver, route building, engine building, and they mishmash them together, and it works so beautifully well. What an awesome game. There's a lot going on, and I don't even think I mentioned how the game end is triggered in the overview. The game end is triggered when there's at least 1 of each colored station on the board, and the bag of passengers is empty at the end of a player's turn, and that'll trigger the end of the game. But what an awesome game. Let's break it down. So first and foremost, the engine building mechanic is so cool. It's so cool. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in a game. The only thing that's kind of close maybe is and this is maybe even a little bit of a stretch, is Hansa Teutonica, when you have those player boards and you can focus on building up different types of actions. You can build up your number of actions, or what locations you can build on, and you can, and it's a little bit kind of like that, but otherwise, I've never played a game with engine building like this, and I love how you can actually manipulate your engine in the middle of the game based on what you need to do and what the game state is. But what makes it interesting is that you can't even do that efficiently unless you've built up that adjust action to allow you to efficiently manipulate it. So you can build that. There's so many different ways you can do it. So that is a really, really cool, a really inventive way of engine building. Let's talk really quick about the components, because the components are awesome, but there's also some kind of faults with them, which I want to quickly point out. First off, those clear track tiles, as I showed you, are awesome. It looks so cool just to like manipulate them and build that out. At the end of the game, the track looks awesome. Super, super cool on that front. And those nice thick station tiles, also very cool. However, they're multiple layers of cardboard kind of pushed together and glued, obviously, but they weren't perfectly aligned. So you have some that were kind of off center, and when you put them in the recessed board, if they were kind of off centered, when you layer down those track tiles, if you have multiple track tiles there, especially if you stack them, they don't necessarily fit in perfectly because you have this piece of cardboard jutting out of the recessed area, if that makes sense. And especially when you had a lot stacked up, it kind of got a little precarious putting them in. A little bit of elbow grease kind of got them in, but just that's one thing. And also the colors on the of the different passengers were pretty hard to distinguish. And I'm not colorblind, but even me, not colorblind, I was struggling to tell the difference between the gold and the copper, and even the purple and then the lilac and the silver were also kind of similar as well. So that being said, other than that, the components are great. Like I said, the track tiles are great. Those stations are great. The recessed boards, the recessed player boards are great. Really, really top-notch production, minus those couple of shortfalls I just mentioned. So, there is, in terms of actual gameplay, getting back to that, there's not a ton of interaction, but there's good interaction. You're definitely racing around the board trying to pick up the passengers you want to pick up, because there are certain colors that you probably need on your own player board. So you may notice that someone else needs the same color, and you're kind of racing, and you kind of see, what are they eligible to pick up? Who can they pick up? How many can they actually pick up? So there is interaction, and it's definitely racing, not direct, but it's indirect. It's solid. It's not completely solitaire at all. I also like how the trains don't turn. Like, that works thematically. I'm originally from New York, spent a lot of time living in New York City, and trains don't just magically turn around. They get to the end of the track, and then they just switch and then turn. So I love how that actually is the way that it works in the game. You need to go to the end of your track or have that reverse train action activated. And I think that just really works well. As a New Yorker former New Yorker, who's ridden the subway many, many times, I liked how they kind of tied that in as well. I like how the victory cards work. Everyone gets 4 of those different kind of end game victory point scoring cards, and everyone gets one of each there are 4 different categories. There's one that focuses on the passengers you pick up, one that focuses on the different track configurations that you lay down. There's one that also focuses on your player board, so kind of the different ways that you kind of arrange and score things on your player board, which I think was very cool. I actually had one game that I was playing where my endgame scoring card was I would get points based on having not filled out those sections for extra turns. So my game was all about making my each turn as powerful as possible, because I could only have 2 actions on my turn, and I didn't want to have additional actions, because for every additional action I added, I would have lost points or not been able to score those points, I should say, on my endgame scoring card. So so you can really do it a lot of different ways. You can focus on having 5 actions, but have them all be weak. You can focus on having 2 actions, but have them all being crazy strong. You can kind of work somewhere in the middle, and it all just works really, really nicely together. One thing about the end game scoring cards, though, some of them may have seemed a little bit unbalanced, and here's an example. There was 2 cards that I felt were a little bit unbalanced. One gave you points at the end of the game for every track tile that was alone, so basically not overlapping with any other track tiles. And there was another one which was the exact opposite, that would give you 1 point for every track tile that overlapped other track tiles. So if you're playing a 2-player game, it's going to be a lot easier just to have tiles that are, by their lonesome, and it's going to be a lot harder to have, or, they're going to be fewer and further between of tracks that you're necessarily overlapping. But if you're playing a 4-player game, every single one of your tiles is probably going to be overlapping, and it's going to be really hard to get a tile by itself. So I'm not necessarily sure if it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you can just focus on other scoring mechanics. As you saw in the overview, there's a ton of different ways to score, and you don't even need to score all your victory point cards, you can focus more on scoring higher amounts of points for your passengers or your links. But I don't know. Part of me thinks maybe that all the different scoring cards should offer similar levels of upside, or maybe certain scoring cards, maybe they should be linked to player count. And this one would be more of a 4-player game versus more of a 2-player card. Just something to think about. I'm not even quite sure if it's an issue, but something that I thought about. But listen, this game is awesome. If you like engine building, if you like route building, if you like pick 'em and deliver, this mashes them all together. It works so beautifully well. So listen, if this sounded interesting to you, check it out. Thank you for watching. My name is Blake Ryder.